Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming you guys with a new deck profile today of my V Premium Grand Ezel Scissors deck. So before we get into the deck profile, I first off want to say that I'm currently in a different filming location right now. One of my neighbors was doing some pretty loud DIY outside, and it was a bit distracting when I was doing some audio tests. And I decided to come downstairs to the living room whilst my family was away because they're out for the day. But yeah, I'm in my living room, and there might be a bit of a difference in the audio, so I'm sorry about that since it's a bit more of an open space. But yeah, hopefully it sounds okay, and hope you guys don't mind. But yeah, we have Grand Ezel Scissors here. So the V Clan collection came out a couple of weeks ago, I think. Currently in the UK, I'm still waiting for my locals to get the Volume 3 set in. But I did order the Volume 4 stuff and got my Grand Ezel Scissors from the mail. And yeah, I picked it up from a different fight, funnily enough, on Card Market, which was quite funny to come across. But yeah, without further ado, we have all the different Ezels here from the V series, and we are playing all of them. So let's get stuck into it. So the first one that we have to talk about is the new one, which is, of course, the Grand Ezel Scissors. So it's really cool to see this card come back. Of course, he was sort of like the new support unit that we got for Ezel back in the day during the Break Ride era to, liberate the lock and stuff like that. But I suppose liberating was the Liberator's job there. But yeah, Ezel was the first technically to break the lock from the Link Joker. So yeah, he's kind of retained some of his old skills, but he's also got a new skill here, which is you can put a grade 3 card with Ezel in its card name into your soul, and then you gain all of the effects of the grade 3 Ezels in your soul. So yeah, you get to take Platinum Ezel skill, Raven skill, Blonde skill, which is actually really funny now because Blonde's attack skill actually becomes quite relevant now, and it synergizes pretty well with some of the other support cards that Golds have got over time. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And then the second skill is that whilst your opponent's Vanguard is a grade 3 or greater, and you've got 2 more grade 3s in your soul, you can Counterblast 1, and until end of turn, Scissors will get +1 drive, and your opponent cannot activate Vanguard auto abilities. So that will be stuff like the Chaos Breaker, Gurgwit, I think Himiko's also got one apparently. But yeah, any auto effect that will activate during your turn that your opponent's Vanguard might have, Ezel Scissors just says no to that. So it locks those down, and then also you get to unlock all your rear guards in case you are going against a Link Joker matchup, which is pretty flavorful, I would say. Ezel Scissors is known for that sort of stuff, so it's nice that they retained that aspect of his skill. But yeah, he's just overall a really cool card, and it makes the Ezel deck just a lot more interesting, which was the main thing that I wanted from the support with, was to just make the Ezel deck more interesting, more entertaining to play. And yeah, I think Scissors does a great job of that. So yeah, we're playing the 4 copies just because I want to consistently see this card. I couldn't make room for the grade 3 searches in this deck, and you'll see why. So I wanted to max out on these just so I could draw it consistently. So yeah, 4 copies of Ezel Scissors. And then next we are playing the next Ezel card, which is the last one that we got, which was Platinum Ezel. So Platinum Ezel, of course, is a counterblast to manipulate your drive checks for the turn. If you have 2 more grade 3s in soul, you can do it to all of the drive checks that turn. So you do it to the normal 2 that you would have, and then more after that. So it synergizes really well with Scissors' skill to get an extra drive check, since you'll now be manipulating the 3 drive checks that you get. So you'll get a check top 2, call 1, trigger check the other, and you'll do that 3 times, which is pretty nice actually. So yeah, I'm doing the 3 copies of Platina, and I'm also doing the 3 copies of Ravenhead Ezel. I feel like this is a good split between these cards, just in terms of having the Ezel names that you need to put into the soul for the Scissors skill, but then also just having a nice variety of the Ezel skills that you can take with the Scissors skill. So yeah, I feel like a 3 and 3 split's fine. You can go more heavy on one or the other if you feel like you want to focus on a particular playstyle, but I'm kind of doing all-rounded build, so I decided to go for an even split with the Platina and the Raven. And then obviously just to go over Raven's skill very quick, since it has been quite a while since we've looked into this card, but you can superior ride this from your hand if you have Blonde Ezel as your Vanguard, and you can counterblast to then ride it as stand, which is pretty cool. So it gives you a way to get like an extra grade 3 in the soul, get that extra Ezel in there. But then also the main skill is that when it attacks, you can counterblast as long as you've got Blonde Ezel in the soul. You get 15,000 power and an extra crit. And then also your opponent cannot use Sentinels to guard the attack. So really good guard restrict. Power and crit is really good to close the game out. And yeah, overall just a really solid finisher. So yeah, you definitely be playing some sort of a ratio of Platina and Raven, but I decided to go for 3 and 3, just to keep it even there, basically. And then the last Ezel that we're playing, obviously, is the 2 blonde Ezel. Decided to keep this as a 2 of. The problem I have with playing the 4 blondes with the Bowmains and Gareth package is that it requires a lot more deck space, and the deck is very tight as it is to fit in the utility pieces that we need, but also just making the deck consistent. So we are doing one Superior Ride package with the Wundrezel and the Howl. So I did want to have 2 copies of Blonde in the deck, just so that I have one in the deck, just in case I do damage check this or draw into it. But also, if you do see them early game, that's fine, since you could always just put it into the soul for Scissors skill, and then the attack skill of Blonde Ezel will come up later in the game, to where you can actually call out an extra unit from your hand to get an extra attack off that turn, which is actually pretty cool. So yeah, we're doing the 2 copies of Blonde for the deck. And then the last grade 3 that we're doing is the 1 copy of Percival. So this guy got limited recently, which is actually quite funny, because I wasn't planning on playing Percival in this deck. But then when I was trying to reconstruct this deck and think about my ratios, I thought, well, I'm playing Agravale in the deck, so I thought it's a pretty... It feels like a lost opportunity if I don't try to include this card in the deck, and with it being limited and being a one-of, I thought it should be pretty easy to fit in. And I did find the space, fortunately, and Percival's just a really good card on its own. So yeah, it's at 1 now, but it's actually quite fortunate that it's at 1, because if it was at 4... I don't think I would have played this, and the deck build might have looked a bit different. But I don't mind this being a nice one-off that we can legally play, basically. So yeah, so that is the grade 3 count. So there's a lot of grade 3s here, actually. I think it was a 13 grade 3 count. So quite big on that ratio, but we do have enough space left for the grade 2s and 1s. So first of all, we have, of course, the 4 copies of Wundrezel, which got a really nice triple R reprint. Absolutely lovely. And yeah, I mean, it's the Superior Ride for the deck. You Soul Blast 1, retire a Howl, and then you Superior Ride Blonde Ezel from the deck. Really, really good. And then obviously you'll get the Drive -1 with the dry check there, but that is fine. But the cool thing is that if you Superior Ride into your Ravenhead Ezel with that Counterblast, you can actually make up for that -1 drive, and then get your Twin Drive with the Ravenhead skill. So do remember that. That is an old play that we could do back when Raven and Wundrezel was first given to us. So yeah, outside of that, Wundrezel does also have a rearguard skill, which is that you can, when it's placed from anywhere onto a rearguard, you can call a card from your hand to rear. This is really good, because this gives it more utility with the multi-attacks that we can do in the late stages of the game, with things like the Platinum Ezel skill. And, you know, because you have that triple drive now through Scissors skill, and then combining that with Platina, we have more of a chance to filter through our deck to see pieces like this, and then calling stuff from our hand to get extra attacks, and also activating skills that require to be called by a card effect. Stuff like Din Drain, for example. So yeah, Wundrezel is a mainstay for the deck, obviously for the Superior Ride, but also just the call skill as well is very versatile. Alright, so next we are playing a very cool card in this deck, which is actually a lot better because of the way that Blonde Ezel interacts now in the deck, which is 3 copies of Agravale. So the really stupid thing that we can do with this is that with Blonde Ezel, because we can attack and then call a unit from our hand, we can attack with an Agravale, suck in a rearguard that we've like already used, and then bounces back to our hand. And then when we attack with our Vanguard, we can then use Blonde Ezel's skill to call a unit from our hand to the rearguard. So then we can call out that bounced Agravale back to get another 24k attack on an XL2 marker, which is really, really good and very impressive. Now, with this deck, I will say, you do generate a lot of soul. So soul isn't too much of an issue, but there's also an issue as well in that we don't have too many cards in the deck that actually soul blast. Of course, we don't want to be soul blasting too much, because we want to make sure that we keep the Ezels in soul. But the couple of cards that we have spare, we do have resources that we can use those for, so that's fine. But yeah, just the attack manipulations that you can do with this, with the Blonde Ezel, is really good. Yeah, it's just always a good attacker with its rearguard skill. And then the Vanguard skill, it's a nice backup. It's at least a +1 for a counterblast, which is solid. And if you do see something useful from the top 3, maybe you might see a Din Drain or a Barangaria for a countercharge, you can refund that counterblast quite easily. So that's not too bad. And then also the added bonus with this deck is that we have Percival in the deck, so we can actually get this card from our deck or drop, and then get a free Agraville basically, and an Excel marker. So Percival, Agraville, sticking around still, but Agraville honestly is just a really good regard on his own, with his own merits there. So really good card, and it's a nice backup ride for the deck. Okay, so the next grade 2 was a new one that we got, which was 2 copies of Bagdemagus. So Bagdemagus is cool, but he's a little bit slow. So he gets 5k for every different named Ezel in your soul. Now do bear in mind that if you have a Scissors in your soul after you've like rerolled or, put a Scissors in the soul for the cost of Scissors skill, that does count towards the, the count of the skill. So you can have Blonde, Raven, Platina, and Scissors in soul, and then this guy can get to like 24 or 29k power on a rearguard circle, which is pretty good. And also when he attacks, if you have 2 or more grade 3 cards in the soul, he attacks a column. So he actually is able to attack back row rearguards as well now, which is really good for Gold Paladin to have a little bit of a control aspect to it. Now I am playing 2 of it just because it's a very late game card, so you can actually cut this down to 1 if you felt like it. But the last grade 2 that I'm playing as a one of, just to have a total of 10 grade 2s in my deck, which is a ratio that I wanted to go for, which was 1 Barangaria. So this would have been a din drain if it wasn't for the fact that I don't want to make my grade 2 and grade 1 count ridiculously low. I am aware that you can succeed with a minimalistic grade lineup for 2s and 1s, but for me, I like to keep it balanced and keep it sort of even to have a good chance to see my grades for the early game, because I really don't like being grade stuck. It's happened way too often with these types of decks, and I just don't like that experience. Now, when it comes to the Bagdemagus and the Barangaria, you could actually replace one of these for a second Barangaria, just so that we have a total of like 4 counter charges in the deck, which is something that I'm thinking about recently. But right now, I'm still sticking with the 2 Bagdemagus, just to have that flexibility for his attacking skill and just the power that he can get overall, which I quite like. So yeah, the 1 Barangaria is basically just to round up the grade 2s to a nice 10 grade 2 ratio, we actually quite like, because like I said, misgrading is just not fun, and I just like to have a pretty solid ratio with my grade 1s and 2s. So with that being said, we have the grade 1s now. So we have the 4 copies of Howl. Howl, of course, is pretty mandatory since we have the Wonder Ezel, and he also got a nice triple rare foil treatment, which is really cool. His skill isn't too relevant. Basically, at the end of the battle that he boosts, if you have an Ezel Vanguard, you can counterblast to put him into the soul to draw a card, and then call a card from your hand. Now, if there are scenarios where you have the extra counterblast to spend on his skill to generate an extra attack, go ahead. But do make sure that you're using your counterblast primarily for the Ezel skill, since the Scissors needs one for a drive check, the Platina needs one to to manipulate the drive checks, and then Ravenhead needs the counterblast for that Sentinel Restrict and crit effect. So be careful with the counterblast, and that's kind of why I've been thinking about bumping Berengaria up to 2 and taking Bagdemagus down to 1, but we'll see what happens. But of course, playing 4 of these because we need it for the Superior Ride with the Wonder Ezel, so that is mandatory for the deck. And then another cool card that we got with the support wave was 4 copies of the Sacred Twin Beast White Lion. So this guy is awesome. Like, I absolutely love this guy. So he's kind of like a Wingle Brave in that regard, in that basically when his attack or the boosted attack that he boosts hits a Vanguard, you look at the top 6 cards of your deck and look for up to 2 grade 3 cards of Ezel in their different names. You add them to your hand, and then if you added 2 cards with that effect, you put one of them into the soul. So this is really good, because getting that Ezel into the soul early game sets you up really nicely with Scissor skill when you get to the grade 3 turn, since you'll be able to, take more effects and maybe do a bit more pressure overall. But generally speaking, Lying is just a consistency boost. It's just to fetch the Ezels that you need for Scissors cost, but also just to see the grade 3s that you want, right? So we don't have a grade 3 searcher in this deck in terms of like Gorbaduck to check the top 5, but having access to the White Lion is definitely a nice, upgrade overall for the Ezel deck. So 4 copies of him, really, really nice support card. And then the last grade 1s in the deck to give us the 10 grade 1s in the deck overall for a 10 and 10 split of 2s and 1s. Two Dindrain, just for the counter charge mainly. You could draw from it if you wanted to, for consistency. You could always use the Wonder Ezel skill at some point to call a Dindrain down in the early game to get an extra draw, just in case you've got a bad hand. But overall, it's mainly in here for the counter charge with the Vanguard, so that's that. So yeah, 2 copies of her. And that's it for the grade 1s. So for the grade 0s, we are playing the Criff, of course, for our starter. You don't have to play this just because we don't require Criff for Blonde Ezel's skill. So that does require the Bowmains and Gareth package, but we're doing it just for the aesthetic since it is an Ezel deck. And then for the other grade 0s, for our triggers, I decided to go for a pretty balanced build of the 4 front trigger and then the 4 crit trigger. Main reason for this is just because I quite like the balanced aspect of having the front trigger benefiting the playstyle of Platinum Ezel, and then the crit trigger is just nice, overall to be able to crit the opponent, but it also helps you pressure with the Ravenhead skill, having that crit gain, and also the Sentinel Strict, so getting a crit from the drive check could also help you close out the game and seal it right there, since, if your opponent's at 3 damage, you could, pressure them with the Raven skill, and then if you rip a crit, that's another 3 damage, and they die, right? So, pretty good. But I do like the balanced aspect of 4 front, 4 crit, just to go with, the Platina and the Raven play style, basically. So, the last couple of triggers we have, of course, is our 4 draw PG, since we want a perfect guard, and draws are always nice to have more consistency. And then we also have the 4 copies of the Heal Guardian. Now, I do understand that some Ezel builds don't actually like playing the Heal Guardian. Seeing lists where they do a 2-2 split of the Heal Guardian and the 20k shield, mainly because with Ezel, we tend to superior ride in the deck, so we get to grade 3 a lot faster than most other decks. The only turn that we wouldn't have on grade 3 would be the turn 1, where we ride our grade 1, but as soon as we ride grade 2, that's an opportunity for us to go to grade 3. So then the Heal Guardians would actually turn off, and we can't use them anymore, and they just become 15k shields, but they are 10k attackers, so you can use these on Excel markers for a 15k attack, which is something to take in mind. But then also, I like to think that with this deck being very heavy on its grade 3 count, shield is very scarce. So just to have that reassurance of the defensive aspect, I like to have the Heal Guardians just in case. So yeah, I don't like to be rushed, and if I get clogged with a bunch of grade 3s, then it's going to be a bad time. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck. So of course, the main mark is going to be the Excel 2, since that's pretty much the case with most Excel decks. But it's just really nice to have a bunch of different Ezels now, and the Grand Ezel Scissors turns this deck into a pretty cool deck now, utilizing all the different effects that Ezel got throughout the years during the V series, and yeah, I suppose the only Ezel that we're missing now is Mithril Ezel, I think, if I remember. And yeah, it'll be interesting if they do that card at some point. But I will say, in terms of gold support, I'd really love to see a Garmor support unit, like an upgraded Garmor from set 3, maybe Garmor Excel or something like that from set 13 in G series, or just I don't know, Garmor Liberator or something, make a better sort of fleshed out Liberator archetype that isn't Bluish Flame, or maybe give us more Bluish Flame support since Percival got a hit, so that could also be an idea. So I don't know, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the support that Ezel got. And yeah, Ezel Scissors is a really cool card, and I'm having a lot of fun with this right now. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Stay tuned, as we'll have the reveal for Dragonic Overlord The End from the live stream on Tuesday. And then we'll also be looking into an overdressed deck profile for Phantom Blaster Dragon from set 4. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and I'll catch you guys then. This is Guardian 205, signing out.